Hello, so welcome to another episode of Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes. I'm Josh,
Hey, this is Wes.
and this week we're going to cover Charley Pride's 1977 album Burgers and Fries.
Burgers and fries.
Sounds like a good one, right?
Yeah, I could go for a burger and a fry.
Yeah, did it make you hungry at all?
It did. I listened to it while I was making.
I know, we should have had some honorary burgers and fries while we recorded this.
It would have gone just right.
All right, so I guess we'll dive into a little bit about Charley Pride. So, Charley Pride was born on March 18th, 1934, in Sledge, Mississippi. And Pride was one of 11 kids and born into a family of sharecroppers. And at age 14, Pride got a guitar from his mother and he learned to play and sing. So he did that for a little bit. And then he was a big baseball player. He ended up playing professionally in both the Negro League and the minors for Major League Baseball. And he had some injuries, it seems. He got a job working at a smelter in Helena, Montana. And while playing for a semi-pro team there, he started singing. And the team's manager started paying him double to sing before every game and then playing the game, which started increasing the game's attendance.
Wow. I didn't even know that. I mean, honestly, I think maybe I've been through Mississippi, but I don't really even have a concept of where Sledge, Mississippi is either. But it's interesting that he would have ended up in Montana, too.
Yeah, it seems like he was kind of all over the place for baseball. He even played for what was called the Louisville Clippers, I think, for a time.
You're the baseball guy here, so.
Well, they don't exist anymore. I mean, I think he was pretty instrumental in the Negro League as well, which, baseball was segregated back then, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in baseball.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I actually had no idea. I knew he had sung I think the national anthem for some baseball games, maybe a World Series game actually, but that makes more sense now why he might have been involved outside of just being like a very well known musician.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. I think he sang the in the 2010s, maybe the Giants World Series game, but he's apparently really good at baseball.
Yeah, that's cool. I really didn't know that at all. It's yeah, a surprising start, honestly.
Yeah, and it seems like he was working as in the smelter plant. I don't know, is that a plant?
Sure, yeah, I'm no smelter, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess it was. I mean, he was melting stuff, so it was so hot. He was getting burns a lot, and but it seems like he was making a reasonable amount of money playing baseball and doing that. Started a family there, was married, and his singing career started to take off while he was doing that. And Red Sovine and Red Foley encouraged him to pursue the music business, and eventually he was signed by Chet Atkins at RCA. So in 1960, he put out his first record and had his first hit with The Snakes Crawl at Night. So Pride was the first black artist to perform at the Opry since DeFord Bailey in 1967. I think it was over like 20 years since Bailey had performed there. And interesting enough, Elvis was the only artist to sell more records than Pride on RCA.
Wow. Man, that's an accomplishment few could ever probably even come close to claiming.
Yeah, and he ended up with around 43 number one singles between Billboard and Cashbox, which I guess Nashville used Cashbox as the main charts for radio play there for a while. And he had 12 number one albums.
Wow. I mean, I think yeah, everybody's probably somewhat familiar. I think Charlie Pride remains a name that maybe not a household name, but certainly among people who value popular music, not just country music, but popular music and beyond. I think Charlie remains somewhat in a league of his own.
Oh, I agree. And he did have, I think, one pop number one hit, which was pretty unheard of back then for country artists.
Yeah. I mean, I think it plays into some of what we'll talk about on this record. Um, so you also dug into a little bit about where this was recorded. I'll save what I have to say about that until you kind of dive into that because we also have some familiar musicians on this one.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's so much out there about Pride. It's hard to go into his biography. He was obviously an incredibly groundbreaking instrumental artist, being the first black country male singer, really. And
Well, the most well known, right? Like, yeah.
there have been a few before, but really none were in the mainstream at all. And, give credit to Chet Atkins for signing him to RCA and not really thinking anything about it back in 1960. That's quite a while back there. So it seemed like Chet Atkins was a good dude and he produced so much great country music. But yeah, this was recorded in 1977 at Music City Hall in Nashville. It was produced by Charley Pride and Jerry Bradley, which was Owen Bradley's son. Fun fact, Jerry Bradley actually helped produce that Outlaws album that was the only platinum country album up until that time.
Really, I didn't know that. Studio. I was just gonna say Music City Hall Studio. I looked that up. I think that's now historic Studio B. I used to work right down the road from it. I could look out the window from the office I was in and see it. So I know the little area. I mean, Music Row in Nashville has a lot of those old historic studios, but it's cool that they're there. I was reading that at one time they were going to get rid of that studio and that people banded together and kept it, which is a common story in Nashville's history. That they're always trying to tear down every good thing here, and thankfully, a lot of people speak up and save them. But yeah, it's just cool. It's one of many albums that was recorded there in that area, and I I like to think that they were putting out some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense because wasn't Studio A and B RCA recording studios?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I mean, they would have, yeah, probably everything we've ever heard was recorded there for the most part.
It sure feels like it.
And that's where the Nashville sound was invented. So pretty groundbreaking place. So even anyone that would consider tearing that down is not right in the head.
Yeah, well, that happens here in Nashville. We could spend a whole episode about that, but yeah, I'm thankful it's there still.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the downfall of capitalism. This isn't our political podcast, but
No.
anyways, so yeah, this was his 25th studio album, and I'll just get into the credits. We had Hayward Bishop on drums, Harold Bradley and Mike Leach on bass, David Briggs on piano, who just passed away sadly, Sonny Garish on pedal steel, Johnny Gimbel and Tommy Williams on the fiddle. The great Jordan Ayers were on the background vocals. We had Charlie McCoy on harmonica and vibes, Dell Sellers, and Pete Wade and Chip Young on guitar.
Well, we've heard some of these names and a couple of these albums that we've done already. Certainly David Briggs, and I want to say, was Chip Young on another one that we covered? Charlie McCoy probably was
I'm pretty
too.
sure Chip Young played on the Jeannie C. Riley and the Linda Martell album.
Yeah, I thought so. I mean, Charlie McCoy is a legendary harmonica player too. I think Charlie McCoy ended up playing with some Bob Dylan records too over time.
He did, but he played on quite a bit. I would say he probably played on most country albums that has harmonica.
I believe he's still playing on albums and out there gigging and playing and recording, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, he is still alive,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
wild.
He showed up on a record. This is not a country record, but I just thought it was cool by U.S. Girls. I think they did a collaboration with Charlie
Oh,
McCoy
wow.
recently, and
I didn't know
uh,
that.
kind of came out of the blue. But yeah, he's still out there, and he's done so much. He's put his harmonica imprint. I'd say of harmonica players, obviously we talked about DeFord Bailey, Charlie McCoy, and I don't know, Mickey Raphael. Are those probably the three like big ones you think of?
Yeah, that's probably the only ones I know of in country. I think they
Yeah,
probably played on about everything.
feels
I
like it.
I
Yeah,
think Mickey Raphael even learned some from Charlie McCoy, if I'm not mistaken. But
it
yeah,
seems
those
right. Yeah,
those guys are major players in the harmonica.
yeah,
That's an interesting instrument to just get absolutely proficient at. But man, it makes some of these records out of the blue.
yeah, yeah. You don't think of many people doing that exclusively, right? Like I don't know about you. I'm fairly certain you play the harmonica and I play it too, and but I'm no master of it. I just can pick it up, and it's a fun instrument to play with other people and sort of join in with. But to master it is a whole different deal. I mean, there's hand movements and the different kinds of harmonicas. Like, it's just it's something that you could really get. It can be so niche, but it is pretty key to the sound on a lot of these records.
Oh, for sure. And when it's played right, it's absolutely magical.
Yeah.
Yeah, so getting into the album, Burgers and Fries, I really loved the album cover and the design and its font. That was the first thing I noted. The photo of Charley Pride and that kind of Western font. Thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it almost, I mean, if you didn't know what it was, it looks more like an outlaw record, really. It's kind of looking off to the side, and he's got, is that like a denim suit with embroidery? I mean, it's not a nudie suit, but it's like a denim looking kind of, you only see the top, but is
Yeah,
that how you interpreted that?
might just be a shirt. I don't know.
Oh, it could be. That's true. But yeah, yeah, it's I mean, I think it's also well known about Charlie Pride that he was a pretty good looking man. I think a lot of people felt that way, and he was a star in every way, really, in that sense, right? Like good looking, had a great voice. It plays well on the cover here. He just looks cool.
All right, tell us how you really feel there, Wes.
I
No, I'm just
mean,
kidding.
I ain't lying.
No, he was definitely a star for a reason. But yeah, it is kind of an edgy looking album cover, kind of, which is funny. This is kind of around the punk era too, but who knows? It's probably just a coincidence.
Yeah, seems like it. I mean, it's only really funny when you consider how like uh well, wait, it's a very classical sounding record, right? Like it's not really pushing the boundaries. In fact, it's kind of staying in its zone for the most part. Not to say that it's not good. It's just that's what a lot of music of that era sounded like.
No, and that really takes us into the music, which is track one, Burgers and Fries. So we get the title track here. This was another track written by Ben Peters, who we've been talking about. And so this was released as a second single from the album in October 1978, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard Hot Country Singles charts. And, I thought this song at first was about like the longing for the good old days. Talking about burgers and fries and drive-in movies. But then, once you realize it's actually just about missing a relationship and, the simplicity of it, wanting the world to go back the way it was and how simple it was with that relationship. Apparently, this song was also used in a Kurt Russell film, Breakdown, in 1997, I saw.
Wow. Okay. I mean, a lot of these songs sound like you said at one point one sounded like a sitcom track, and when Sonia was listening to this with me, she said one sounded like a game show intro, and that's true. So I think it's just part of the. It makes sense that they could be on a movie.
Yeah, I really like this song. It kind of gives you that similarity maybe to like Jack and Diane or something, the simple romance where they're having this kind of small town, simple life, burgers and fries, like the tasty freeze.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's true. Like you get the idea of like an old American cafe or something. I mean, that's where I don't know about you. I mean, in my small town, we had a place called Farrell's where you could go and get a burger and fries, and you'd sit at a counter. It's still around. It caught fire at one point, but they rebuilt it, thank goodness, because it's a classic. But if you didn't go there, the only other place you go was Denny's. But that's kind of what I think of when I think of like burgers and fries.
You didn't go to the big boy?
No, we didn't have Frisch's Big Boy where I was from.
Funny enough, one of my first dates was at the Tasty Freeze in Indiana, so
Did
I
you
can
get burgers
relate
and
to Jack
fries?
and Diane. I got some ice cream, no chili dog. But I said I thought the song was really beautiful. The acoustic guitar playing with the strings really works in the verses. The line "Oh, I long to do the things you did before" kind of sums this song up. Yeah, just a beautiful song with kind of a silly title that works. I can see why it was a hit there at the time, and I like the kind of spoken word fade out that it ends with.
Yeah, reminded me a lot of. I feel like a lot of George Jones songs either start or end that way, with sort of spoken word. I mean, he's not the only one, but it made me think most directly of George Jones. Um, and yeah, you and I might diverge. I don't think we diverge heavily, but maybe a little bit on the strings. I just have a really hard time with the Nashville sound and what became country pop. At least as I read about it, it seems like country pop is what you would call. Nashville sounds more like early '50s, maybe '60s, and this was what you call country pop. Both which were, I think, responding to musical trends of the time, right? Like the Nashville sound, I think, was sort of an answer to rock and roll, and country pop obviously was trying to merge country and pop, which, frankly, of anyone to do it, I think Charley Pride was probably the master of that sound. Him or I don't know. We'll dive into this later, but I know we kind of said. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that actually because you mentioned Ray Charles at one point, and he I think he was more doing the Nashville sound, right? But they share very similar backgrounds, the Nashville sound and country pop. So I think it's fair to mention those in the same sentence. But yeah, I mean, I'll just settle on that. I adore Charlie's voice, and I think that the lyrics are like a really good song about pining for sort of the better days of a relationship. So yeah, Charlie's voice makes every one of these songs work, and this one especially.
Yeah, I mean, I think they actually called it Country Politan, and Chet Atkins was really instrumental in creating that sound, the whole Nashville sound, the pop, the strings, and all that, which makes sense because some of his first stuff was with Charley Pride there at RCA, and it kind of got carried over to just become Charlie's sound, which I think it works really well with Charlie. It's pretty subdued at parts, but some other artists, it's not always my favorite sound. It's obviously not modern country pop, but for back then, it was pretty poppy in regards to just how country was. It's not honky tonk or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. And there was no, I mean, by this point, we'd already had outlaw music, making its rounds, and it was very much the opposite of that. So, yeah, just very traditional sounding, really.
Yeah, this album would have came out around the same time as the Outlaws album. I think that was 77, if I believe. So
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, that's fascinating too, because uh, again, I mentioned my radio show sometimes, which is fun. As I've got a little radio show here in Nashville called the Gold Rush, but um, as I've been diving in year by year, it's fascinating in country music how many different things are going on sometimes in one particular era, and there's always seems well, I don't know about now, but for a very long time there always seemed to be a game of tug of war going on between like wanting to sound very traditional and wanting to break new ground, right? Like we can't really mention the Nashville sound without mentioning like the Bakersfield sound because those two things were trying to decide which direction they wanted to go. And turns out what really happens is all these things continue to exist, which I think is kind of unique of aspect of the genre.
yeah, and I think with Charlie's voice and being a Chet Atkins produced artist, it makes sense. He was pretty instrumental in building that sound, and it really worked for him. So I like that he kept true to that and wasn't trying to be an outlaw or someone he wasn't. So really works here.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, I don't think he had to. I think he was that good.
No, I mean he was definitely one of the biggest artists in the world. So he was just being himself, and I think people appreciated that about him. So that takes us into track two, "The Best in the World," which is another Ben Peters song, and this is the one Wes was talking. I said it sounded like a sitcom theme. When it comes in, I can just see like the montage of the family coming through the front door, and you hear the song starting. It really had that vibe. I actually kind of like this song. I think the chorus is really great. It's definitely as catchy as a sitcom theme or a jingle. Honestly, I really was trying to dive into what this song's about. I honestly can't really figure out what this song's about super well, but I don't hate the song. I think it's catchy. It's definitely very pop centered country with the strings and the background vocals and stuff.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a hard time with that. I have this tendency, I think, when I'm making like playlists from that era to try to maybe avoid that sound, the string sound. Not Charley Pride. I actually think again, like if I'm going to dive into that sound in that era, he's one of my favorite people to do that. Yeah, it just sounds dated to me, I guess. I mean, it is dated, but it just the strings just don't they just personally don't really do a lot for me. And I don't really know. This song is a bit vague, I agree. Like a lot of these tell a little story and yeah, this one isn't really a standout in my mind.
No, it doesn't really tell much of a story because I can't really tell what the story is, but um, I think the catchiness of it kind of saves it in Charlie's voice, but I have found myself listening to it more multiple times, and I think I have it memorized. But
Well, this is a very short record, 27 minutes. So it's I wouldn't say easy to do, but yeah, I mean, I we've been listening to different albums as a part of this so far, and this is by far the shortest, and I was able to listen to it over and over again, um, really with relative ease. And I do think it maybe because I was living more with that sound, I liked it more each time. I think some of that is like if you're not listening to music that has that like grand orchestral sound with the strings, it's a little jarring because of how dated it sounds. But then when you sort of live in that space, a lot of these songs are very good.
yeah, I agree. I mean, country politan's not something I usually gravitate towards in my own listening, but it's done well here. And I mean, if you're gonna have someone do it, Chet Atkins was a master, so he knew what he was doing, and those weren't just average people playing on them. So they
Yeah, it's a
are
good point.
beautiful. Yeah.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
didn't.
you're oh,
Oh, go ahead.
I think for me too, it's funny that we're doing these album by album because I have, ADHD hyperfixation. So I have even listening to this morning in the car. I was on a drive. I was singing along with all the songs 'cause I've already memorized them, and it's kind of funny. But it kind of takes me back into the days of when I was younger, and definitely when these came out, where you didn't have streaming or these endless options to just listen to an album one time and go on to the next thing, and you fixate on something for so long because it's all you can listen to. It breaks into your brain, and you have these better memories. And I think it makes me appreciate a lot of this music a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, everything's kind of driven by the algorithm anymore, and so to be intentional and choose an album and listen is it's quite different than the way that a lot of music is consumed now. I'm curious if you agree with me on this. I think of my experience with Charlie Pride as being not one of specific albums. And this is true of a lot of country musicians because of the volume of albums that they had. We've talked about this multiple times, but how quickly they would go in and record, and there would be an album done, and there could be multiple albums put out in one single year. Uh, Oftentimes, because of that, I almost think of Charlie Pride more, and I've experienced his music more through singles and not albums, like specific songs.
Oh, for sure. And I think up until the outlaw music came around, it was more, I mean, it was a lot of singles. And like I said, he had over 40 number one hits, and that's just the number one hits. I mean, you're talking about count hundreds of songs that charted, which is insane for that time. And
Well, my mind
like I
goes
said,
to Tom Petty, like somebody who would have songs like that, right? So many hit singles, and but if you dive into the albums, they're great too. It's just not. I don't think that's also people's general experience with like Petty music either.
no, and especially now, I mean, so far removed, no, I would say very few people are going through and I'm going to listen to this entire person's discography. And part of it too is it's daunting. Like I said, this is 1978 and this is his 25th album. You got people like Willie that I think are, I want to say he's approaching like 200 albums. I mean, there's some of these people are releasing 2 and 3 a year. I think actually, if you look, Pride released 2 or 3 within 1977, 78. And, this
Yeah.
wasn't the peak of his career. This is where he's getting a little bit older already.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I mean, you tell me you picked this one, but I assume you picked it just because the name was fun, right?
Yeah, I did. I thought it sounded interesting. I wasn't familiar with it.
Well, it was a good pick. I had no prior knowledge of this one either, and I was really happy we picked it because there's at least a few of these that I would listen to regularly.
Yeah, I had actually never heard any songs off this album, even though there were some of them are hits.
Same.
All right, so track 3 is Whose Arms Are You In Tonight? And this was written by Rory Burke, Gene Dobbins, and Johnny Wilson. And I looked these up. I couldn't find any information about the other two, but Rory Burke actually wrote The Most Beautiful Girl for Charlie Rich, and Patch It Up he wrote with Eddie Rabbitt for Elvis, which that's actually one of my favorite Elvis tracks. This was more of a slow down track with the strings and guitar, nice piano sprinkled through. Definitely a tearjerker here.
Yes, I think that Countrypolitan, as you said, sound works the best on this track. Actually, I think generally my feeling about that is uh, it seems designed for a slow tempo, and it gives it that sort of lush and heartbreaking sound. And the piano, I much prefer the piano over the strings. But I think that's also just maybe I just don't listen to a lot of string music, frankly. I like piano in anything, and I especially like it in country music, and I like it on this song quite a bit.
I agree. I like this song. I think it's a perfect slow song, and it's this one is a very classic Charley Pride countrypolitan sound, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. There's some pretty like hard hitting love songs on this too, but one line that did stand out to me: "From one to another you sail. Yes, you try to hide it, but that guilty look is almost like reading your mail." I don't know. The idea of like someone reading someone else's mail being such a betrayal is a funny thought to me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not a funny song though. A lot of these
No.
songs are very clearly about heartbreak, which that's not surprising. Fits the genre quite well.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad album.
Surprisingly, despite it being called Burgers and Fries, yeah.
Which takes us into track 4, Nothing Prettier Than Roses, and this is not a sad song. It was written by Gary McRae, and I really love the Spanish style guitar riff with the strings to open this one up. Has some really beautiful percussion on it as well. At first, I thought, because country people, we don't always enunciate super well, which is something I'm trying to do on this podcast so people understand what I'm saying. I thought it kept saying nothing prettier than roses. I was like, okay. But it's saying rose is. And it's talking about Rose, which I kind of had a special affinity for this one after I figured that one out because my first cat's name is Rose. So this is just a pretty, like, kind of love song.
It's a very sweet song. It as I listened to this record and I heard this song, my initial reaction was like some of these, this one included, that I wasn't sure how to feel about it. And I have to remind myself sometimes that because I listen to a lot of like sad sack music or sometimes political music or other things like that, that some songs are just meant to evoke some joy. And I think this is one of them, right? Like I could see somebody playing this at a wedding or as like if their name was Rose or something, I could see them playing that or yeah, you mentioned your cat. And I think that it's just sweet. It evokes a sense of joy, which we need in music sometimes. I'm not saying I only listen to sad stuff, but sometimes I do get stuck in that.
Oh, yeah. And it's just a really pretty sounding song. And like I said, when you find name songs and you have some sort of affinity towards it, you're kind of like, oh, this is even more special. And, I named my cat after Rosalita by Springsteen. And I would find songs, like Rosie by Jackson Brown. I was like, oh, this is cute. And then actually you listen to the lyrics and you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have an affinity to this song. And so this one's actually a cute song about Rose or Rosie or whatever. So yeah, just a pretty little song.
It is, yeah. I don't know that I have much else to say other than I really enjoy that intro, as you pointed out, the sort of Spanish style guitar and the strings. It's just a pretty song with a nice. It's not even a message. It's just a sweet song. There's really not much else to say about it.
Same. All right, so that takes us to track 5, Memories. Memries, which is written by Linda and Susan Hargrove, and it's the end of side A. I said I love the spelling of this one. It reminds me of some of Ray Charles' country sounding tracks. It's really piano heavy with the strings, really slow and a sad one. Memories only make me feel old before my time. Pretty sad there. And I looked into Linda Hargrove. She actually wrote Tennessee Whiskey with Dean Dillon, which I would say is one of the more famous country songs of all time.
You mean that Chris Stapleton one?
Well, it was originally David Allan Coe, but yes, I think Chris Stapleton took it at number 1 as well. That was a hit for a lot of people. George Jones as well.
Yeah, it's just a joke. I know a lot of people associate that song with him these days, but it's been covered by many people, and it's one of those things we've talked about on this so many times where a great song in country can be done in many different styles by many different people, and it works because it's such a well written song, and that's among the top, I would say, just in terms of how many people recognize it and know that song.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, props to Chris Stapleton for making that such a known song. I would say most people at this point know that song. I mean, I am partial to David Allan Coe and George Jones' version, even though Stapleton's from my hometown. But yeah, it just shows it's a timeless song that 40 years later someone can still make a hit.
Well, I'll tell you, we were at Sonia's parents' house one time, and her dad actually that pulled that up and was singing the lyrics and knows it like front to back. And he's from Bosnia originally, so it's made its ways overseas. Even I mean, he's been here a long time, but just I think that it's more than just a American song. It's just well liked. I don't know. I know this isn't the Tennessee whiskey podcast, but I do think it's a fun song to talk about. And one day we'll talk about Dean Dillon some more too.
Yeah, I would love to. He's a brilliant songwriter. All right, so that takes us to the side B opener, track 6, When I Stop Leaving, I'll Be Gone. So this was written by Kent Robbins, product of Mayfield, Kentucky, and he also wrote I Just Started Liking Cheating Songs and Straight Tequila Night for John Anderson, as many other songs I was looking at, and I said, now we're grooving here. I mean, disco country at its finest. This was released
Yeah.
as the first single from the album in May of 1978, peaking at number 3 on the U.S. Billboard Hot Country charts. And it starts off with guitar and trumpets playing the riff in sync there. I could listen to this one a million times and want to dance and move. And man, I'm surprised I've never heard this Pride song. I still think about it and want to keep listening to it. And it just makes you happy and just, man, this is,
I I
this is
love
a,
this song.
oh man.
I could not stop listening to it. I have gone back to this song over and over and over. This is actually the one, funny enough, just from the horns, Sonia said it sounded like a game show, which she's right. Like I could totally hear like somebody walking out in that ba 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 ba, like it does have that sound, but it's just so good. The horns, like, I mean, give me the horns over the strings any day, and oh, it's just so. Yeah. How can you listen to this and not tap your feet and want to dance?
No, and you talk about the trumpet and the horns. In the chorus that turns into the pedal still, it's like, man, what a blend of sounds there. Like, it's kind of hard to find a lot of country disco because it exists, and I think that's probably a genre people don't even realize exists. I actually saw they're putting out a Tony Joe White country disco album, which I can't wait to listen to. But even Waylon has some stuff that I don't think people, but yeah, I mean, Love's not getting any clearer. Sometimes I think it's all done with mirrors. The way he sings that, where you can't even tell it's mirrors. I love that. Just Man.
It's just an incredible song. I really well one. Let's just this song has nothing in common with anything else on the record in terms of how it sounds, which I think is kind of fascinating. Like I almost feel like I know we're on a different side of the record now, but I'm like, was this a different session? Like what happened here? I'm amazed by it, to be honest, because if this whole record sounded like this, I would never stop listening to it. And I think it really shows Charlie's range as a country singer too. He's not singing this one anything like the rest of the songs, and he still sounds so good. It's up tempo, like you said. It's got that. So it's a disco country song, and his voice is carrying it. I mean, it also just feels so much of that era, and in a good way. And the horns just make me want to get up and dance.
Oh, I agree. It's not cheesy at all. I mean, the lyrics are great in this song. It's hilarious that a guy from Mayfield, Kentucky wrote this. And actually, because I went through and when we listen to these, I try to find, is there live versions? Did other people cover these songs? And I found a really odd live performance on a New York syndicated show from the late 70s called Sha Na Na, which was like a variety show that had the band. I guess they were the hosts of the show. And it's weird because the sketch is actually poking fun at Hee Haw and probably being kind of offensive towards country people, but Charlie owns it and he performs and dances to it, and it's pretty remarkable. I'll link that in the Substack. I mean, man, yeah, this, I think, a lot of people are, know like Dolly Parton's like 9 to 5, kind of some of those 80s stuff and more pop crossover hits. I'm honestly not sure why this isn't such a massive known song because it's really probably one of the best pop kind of crossover country songs I've ever heard.
Yeah, I have no disagreement there. I also love the title. When I stop leaving, I'll be gone.
Oh, it's
Uh,
brilliant.
it is, and everything about it is I don't even know. I don't even. There's nothing I can say to sum up how good this song is. I was blown away by it, and it's definitely one that I know I'll go back to over and over again and listen to and turn on and dance a little bit. And yeah, you sent me that sketch. I actually thought when you first sent it to me that it was Hee Haw, but even Hee Haw didn't lean. Hee Haw seemed to have a despite being a comedy show, it clearly had a respect for like country people and not country music people. I'm talking about actually country people like me and Josh here. But yeah, what, that sketch maybe went a little too far in poking fun at it, but it is fascinating and it's a time capsule. And you and I both know. I mean, even when we were growing up, yeah, it was easy to. People often made fun of people from the country, and so I won't say that they were doing anything that people didn't do necessarily, but you're right. Charlie plays off him really well and kind of shows his chops as an actor there.
Oh, for sure. And, you make fun of your own, but when someone else is making fun of your own, it's a little more touchy. But yeah, I mean, it definitely, there's always the stereotypes and even moving away from Kentucky and stuff where you can feel ashamed of your accent and I'm not super country or anything. I'm not trying to fake that up or anything, but yeah, it is like a stereotype. And I think now I'm in a place where I appreciate that and I'm not ashamed of it. But yeah, it can be touchy sometimes.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I'm from a very small town in Kentucky, and clearly I didn't move very far. I went to Nashville, so I guess I didn't run away from the country very much, but maybe I ran towards it actually. But I will say, you and I agree. I don't think of myself that way necessarily, but I enjoy that. That's sort of what I grew up around, and that doesn't happen when you're younger. Sometimes in a small town, it doesn't necessarily work that way, but then you kind of come around to it, and you feel a little bit more pride about it. But I think, yeah, that's a good a time as any to say too. Like sometimes you and I can lean in on the country sound and our voice a little bit, and it's either sometimes it's accidental, but if it's not, that's just because we grew up around a lot of people who sound that way, and it's not to belittle anybody. Like I actually love the way that people sound from kind of all over where I'm from, and Kentucky and Tennessee are long states. Depending on where you go, everybody sounds a little bit different.
Oh, for sure. I was watching a documentary today. It just came out on HBO, and they're in Pikeville, and man, that's a way different accent, and I love listening to it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think definitely talking to you, I feel a little more country sometimes with my accent. But anyways, that's not what we're talking about. So, track 7, I Can See the Lovin' in Your Eyes. And this was written by Mickey Johnson, June LaSalvia, and Charley Pride actually helped write this one. And this, I think the tone switches here to more classic country and Pride. It kind of reminds me of a George Strait song, honestly, with a pedal steel and fiddle. Very timeless sounding country song. More of a loving theme here, too. I think the way Pride sings eyes near the end of the song is like really beautiful. It's just, a great classic country track.
Yeah, there's always one or two songs on every one of these albums we've covered that I keep saying is more of a straight country song. Or to your point, straight country, Strait, right? George Strait. That's definitely this one. I think Charlie sings a lot of love tunes, but I don't know. He just sings them so well. They always play as very genuine. But I like a good straight country song. When I say that, I just mean really and truly. It's not trying to reinvent anything. It's just very much playing on like the core of the genre.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good song. All right, so that takes us to track 8, One on One. And this is another Ben Peters song. Very pop centered here with the string. Seems to be about two people who are really independent, but when they're together, the focus is on each other. I like the song lyrically. It's a little more depth and something that I don't think I've heard as many songs about thematically. I could relate to it a little bit. And I think we talked about this earlier. I've never been a huge fan of Nashville sound either with the strings and such, but it kind of works here. I don't hate the song.
Yeah, I mean it's Charlie's voice that saves the song from being something I don't know if it's something I would say I don't want to hear. It's just like if let's say I'm consuming music the way that many people do these days, myself included, and I'm just kind of like listening through a couple of random tracks. If I'm listening to say 1970s country and I hear the Nashville sound or sort of like the strings pop up and all that, I might skip that song, right? But um at the same time, if I hear Charlie Pride singing, I probably won't, which is true here. And I do think the pedal steel works really well. I actually feel this way about many of the songs on this is that the strings and some of the like even on some of them the background singers doing this sort of really orchestral sound, that's all really dialed up, and some of the pedal steel and guitar and the rest is dialed down. And I wish it was the opposite. I know that was sort of the sound of that style, but just look at the difference in this sound and something like When I Stop Leaving I'll Be Gone, right?
Yeah, and I mean, give me pedal silver strings any day, but that's just kind of the product of what this is.
Yeah, for sure. And I really don't think that country can be so easily compartmentalized into like country pop, Nashville sound, Bakersfield sounds. I mean, these were specific movements, but I think that's actually less important when you're listening to this music. It's nice to know about and think about, and it can give you some context about maybe why a song was recorded the way it was. But um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, it seems like anytime there was a trend in country music, uh, it would sometimes sound a little bit behind the times compared to some of the other things, but they were trying to get cross appeal going on. And, we mentioned this earlier, but I think the Nashville sound was trying to sort of serve as an answer to the rise of rock and roll. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was string music on other things in the 70s, other genres, but uh, it did sound this song, this style, even by the standards of 1977, sounded a bit old.
Oh, for sure. And it's kind of contemporary to Phil Spector. Just the lush sound is just done a little differently. All studio musicians and stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is nearly 20 years after the start of it.
Yeah, the famed what was his The Wall of Sound, right?
Oh, yeah. And very different than the Nashville sound, but similar ideologies.
Yeah, same kind of idea that you said it right, that lushness of sound really.
Yeah. So that takes us to track 9. Where do I put her memory? And this was written by Jim Weatherly. And I found a weird fact here. Weatherly was a starting QB for Ole Miss, and he pursued music after college instead of football. And he wrote the classic track "Midnight Train to Georgia." Actually,
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's a storied life in and of itself.
yeah, that's so too. He wrote quite a bit of songs that I was looking at that I was familiar with, but that one stuck out to me. I really love that song. Man, this was released as a third single from the album in February of 1979, and this actually was the number one hit from the album on the U.S. Billboard Hot Country charts. This song starts off very slow, and it actually sounds a little like leaning into 80s, even though we're not quite there yet. But lyrically, the song's narrator's putting away everything that reminds him of his love that he lost, but everything is in its place except for her memory. And where do I put her memory when it haunts me night and day? Which I thought the background vocals on this are extremely haunting and really fit the song. It is a sad, sad track here. I wish the pedal steel, like we were talking about, was more prominent instead of the strings, but it fits the album sound and Pride's more pop song sound, and I could have seen George Jones having a huge hit with this as well. I can see why it's very relatable, sadly. I mean, who hasn't had to hide away everything that reminds them of a love you had that you lost, but you can't hide away that memory, It's always there in your mind.
Yeah, it is a very George coded track, and I do agree about the pedal steel too. And I'll say again, I wish that and the guitars were a little higher up in the mix, but um, yeah, it is just it's a crushingly sad song. You're right. It's a
Yeah.
classic story. I there's one particular line I didn't write it down, so I don't have it in front of me, but where he's talking about just taking all the pictures down off the wall and stuff. And I mean, it yeah, it's a heartbreaker song, right? Your heart's broken. You're moving on from something, and you just can't really get there. And I mean, I think Charley Pride's voice is so perfect for that kind of song because it's just drenched in emotion. I mean, he pulls you right in. You just feel the hurt in what he's singing.
Yeah, and it even gets to the everything is in its place except for her memory. It's just like, man, that is sad. This song is definitely a sad one. I really do like it though. I definitely one of the sadder tearjerker country songs, and yeah, I could see why this was a hit for sure.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think it has everything you'd want in a country music song, especially because for a long time a breakup. I feel like you had in early country music, you either had a breakup song or a drinking song a lot of times, or maybe both. But this is a great sort of breakup or maybe even divorce song. It's hard to say. They don't really say one way or the other, but um, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, I think that the lushness works on a song like this just because it's meant to sound sad and maybe a bit I don't know. I mean, or I can't find the right word for it right now, but I think that's the problem I run into with a lot of these sort of 60s and 70s country tunes with all the strings and the Nashville sound is just if I hear too many of them back to back, I start to lose my focus. But I think this album works well. We the last time we talked about the Linda Martell record, we talked about some of the sequence was a little bit odd because you'd have this really upbeat song and then sort of like a really slow track, and it would almost lose some of its momentum. I don't know that this runs into that problem as much. Maybe because some of it sort of leans heavier on this on the slower side, and because the album length is just so short. 27 minutes. But um, I actually started thinking about that a little bit more today, just sequencing. And even though side A and side B was so important, so much of that too was like the first song on a side was probably going to be your single, right? So a lot of times that juxtaposition of like a really fast or like maybe popular sounding sound on a song, it makes sense that they might have put that or front loaded each side with that, and then maybe put the slower songs kind of in the middle. I mean that was probably intentional.
Yeah, and which I think that's why the sequencing works on this album because this is almost the last track, and this was the number one hit from the album. So I think the sequencing is great on this album, which kind of makes it a more pleasurable listen for me.
It feels very intentional.
Yeah, for sure. Did you notice the background vocals in this? They're almost creepy, haunting.
Is that the
Like
Jordanaires?
I assume so because I don't see anyone else. It sounds almost like a woman, but I on the track listing there's no one else singing on it. So I assume it's the Jordan Harrison. I bet it is haunting.
Yeah, yeah. It's a haunted song, I think would be a right description for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not gonna make an AI version, but if I could give anything, I would have had a cover of this with George singing it with just pedals still. I think that would have been a smash hit. I mean, I don't Pride's voice is beautiful, but I think, just if you lean more into the country with the pedal still, because that can get so, so sad, it would have made this song just unbearable.
Yeah, it would have been cool to hear them both sing it together. Even I wouldn't have hated that.
Yeah, they were friends. But all right, that takes us to track 10. You snap your fingers and I'm back in your hands. This was written by John Schweers, which I think is how you say it. Nice closing track. It's such a timeless sounding country song, and the guitar riff is like identical to a David Allan Coe song, and I can't for the life of me figure out which one, but I think now that we're just listening to stuff over and over, and I feel like I have a Rolodex of country songs in my head already, I just start to hear stuff that's too similar, and it makes sense. Three chords and the truth is what they call country music, but yeah, it kind of sounded like a little David Allan Coe, but that just kind of sounds like a classic country song here. Did you notice the actual snap of the fingers on the chorus? I thought that was pretty innovative, and I would have been disappointed if they didn't include that.
Oh yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I did notice it when I was listening, and it put a grin on my face, and I thought about him doing that song live and people like snapping in unison.
Yeah, the chorus with that guitar riff and the snaps, I loved it. Beautiful track. Finally, we get to end it a tear jerking pedal steel solo here.
And a xylophone, I think. At least I believe I heard a xylophone in there.
That's the vibes I think that Charlie McCoy was playing.
Okay, I wondered about that. It works. This song sounds. It's an interesting closing track, I guess, is the way that I would think about this. I, this is one of the few albums we've covered that doesn't seem to have. Oh, I know. I lied. I was about to say it wasn't sequenced differently across different releases, but that's not true. I was reading about it, and the sequence was different on vinyl between that and tape and maybe CD, but I think the streaming version is the same as the vinyl release. Um,
The cassette version is really different. I don't know.
yeah, I don't understand that why that might have been the case because it wasn't long. I mean I know cassettes have but they have less limitations really than say a forgive me, it's been a while since listened to a cassette, and you're more a cassette guy. Are there sides on a cassette? I genuinely can't remember.
Yeah, it's the same. For some reason though, they swapped the best in the world and this song on the cassette version. So actually, this is the second song on the cassette version.
I'm not sure it works any better as the second song, but
No, I think it's a fine ender.
yeah, same. I mean, I guess I think of album enders and beginnings as like trying to make a point, but that's not really. I don't know that this album is really interested in that altogether.
No, it's not. It is a little bit, but thematically, you can say you snap your fingers, and I'm back in your arms again. He's been kind of sad this whole album. Now he's saying just do anything. I'm coming right back, and that's where he's leaving it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, this is also a very just country song played straight. It works as a country song, and even the snap. I'm almost surprised no one else. I've never personally heard anyone else do that, and it's like just gimmicky enough that it works really well. And I like it. I mean, the biggest takeaway I have at the end of this song is, wow, how are we at the end of this album? Again, 27 minutes. That's almost unbelievable to me.
Yeah, it is very short, but it works. I mean, some of these albums you don't want to listen to for 50 minutes, or especially a good country song. It's not a jam song. You don't need all this extra instrumental stuff. I mean, obviously, I would have loved to hear some pedal steel or guitar solos, but I think this album too shows like how diverse country sound can be. Not honky tonk. This is a little different than what you and I are listening to on the regular, and it still works. I mean, like you said, you got vibes in here, and I mean, we've heard harpsichord on some of the other ones, sitar. You never know what's gonna show up in country music, and it always works in its own weird way. I mean, I don't think people give enough credit to how broad country music can sound, and I think too. I mean, I had someone ask me recently, "What are you listening to get into country?" And I'm just like, who knows? I mean, you talking about so many different sounds, and I think a lot of people are turned off because like I only know what's on the radio. I'm like, well, that even is even country. And you think about this stuff, even within. I mean, this isn't far off from some of the stuff we've talked about in the mid '80s, and every one sounds drastically different.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it- there's so much variation and the instrumentation. There are things in common, as we pointed out on all of these. There's often similar session musicians that were playing in Nashville at the time, and they show up over and over again. And some instruments show up pretty much across the board. Like I think we've had pedal steel on every album, and that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the joy of this. I'm glad we picked this record because it is not something that maybe if I had known ahead of time what it would have sounded like, I might have been like, maybe not, maybe we'll pick a different Charley Pride record. But I don't feel that way at all now. I'd really like to go find a copy of this, which I don't think would be impossible or anything. But it'd be nice to have a copy on vinyl to play it. And it's just cool. It speaks to, well, one, I'm glad we covered Charley Pride in general because he is to me one of the more legendary figures in country music and just a all around kind of badass guy, really. But I also just I didn't know this record before, and I'm glad that I do now.
Yeah, and I mean, even thinking back to the last two records we covered, where it has the same song sung by two different people with nearly the same musicians playing the song, and they sound drastically different. I think country just interpreted in so many ways. It's really beautiful. And so, like you said, I mean, Charlie Pride, he's amazing. His voice was so magical. So many master hits, and obviously so important to country music, groundbreaking artist. And I think I would love to have someone on here someday that can talk more about the integration of country music and how some of these groundbreaking artists were so instrumental and changed things, and how we still have so much work to do within country music and music in general. It's like I'd rather have an expert talk about that kind of stuff because it's so important and it's something that needs to be discussed. But Charlie Pride, someone that should just be celebrated for who he was and what he gave to country music in the world, even baseball. Someone that loves baseball. But yeah, just I've watched a lot of videos. I talked to Wes a lot about this country music family reunion. I've gone down a rabbit hole, and I was cracking up last night because Bob Dylan's posting it on his Instagram with no context. Because I've been watching this like every day, and Charlie Pride sadly died of COVID, but he was on quite a bit of those episodes, and just listening to him talk, tell stories, and sing, his voice just talking was beautiful. I love listening to him. He's funny, really funny, very witty. I mean, he was definitely one of a kind and deserves to be honored. I really love Charlie Pride, and this made me appreciate him more. I mean, just being able to hear a few of these songs, When I Stop Leaving, I'll Be Gone. I'll never forget this song. I'm gonna honestly, when I turn this off and stop talking to you, I'm gonna go listen to it again because I just want to.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Yeah, I think you were right to speak to a desire to find that diversity in country music, that it's better today than it was then, but it's still not where it should be. Certainly not what's being played on mainstream radio, although um there are, I'd say, Americana music or like roots music. Sometimes you can find a little more diversity, obviously, than sadly what's on country music radio today, which, if anything, is much more homogenized. But I think that, again, I mentioned I have the radio show, and I do have to think about this when I'm trying to, because I'm playing on community radio, freeform radio. I get to have a little more leeway with what I play, and as a part of that, I like to think about what's not being played on radio. Which, that's not true of Charley Pride, but it was fascinating because he had so many hits and he was a beloved figure. But um, I do know that, when I was diving into some of those earlier decades in country music, and I've done a lot of different styles of programs, but at one point I went decade by decade, and one thing that I ran into a lot was that, sadly, there just wasn't a lot of diversity. I mean, in some of the earlier days, there were very few women to play, and there certainly weren't very many black musicians. You could find Charley Pride. I mean, this isn't to say that they didn't exist. They were making music, and sadly, it just wasn't being played. And I think, the last episode we talked about Alice Randall's book, My Black Country, but she talks about some of the recordings that, sadly, uh, if they're not totally lost to time, they're sitting somewhere where no one knows where they are. And there definitely is a history of country music and black country musicians that goes on before Charley Pride. But I'm happy that he is a singular figure in country music, and that he was very famous, well known, put out a lot of great records. Frankly, he was a trailblazer, just like Linda Martell was. And we didn't actually set out to cover those albums back to back, but it's been really nice to think about some of the earlier history of country music, and to reflect on the ways that hopefully it can continue to um, diversify. And I agree. I hope we can have a guest on who can speak more broadly about that. Well, actually, more specifically, I would say we're speaking very broadly about it, and I would love for us to have someone on who can dive in and talk about it more, because yeah, it's very important, and you and I both care about it quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I said, even talking about that is so nuanced and deserves a lot of time. Same with Charlie Pride. I mean, his life was so long and he did so much. We don't have enough time to just talk about his biography. So I think too, this album's interesting because it's nearly 50 years old, and you think about burgers and fries and some of the pop within this. I think this album's a perfect way of showing, like, you hear all these horrible stereotype songs now, which I'm not going to go into, but they're like, oh, I wish I was country, or I can't go fish, or all this whatever. But, Burgers and Fries is kind of that, kind of like a perfect version of someone's trying to write one of those songs. And some of these songs are like the perfect kind of like pop crossover that can work, but it's still authentic to country and is actually country music. It's not just an entirely different genre or just some person that has a country accent singing a song. It's a really perfect example of how those could cross over, in my opinion, even though it's 50 years old almost. And yeah, I mean, we didn't set out to do any of these. It's kind of random, but kind of accidentally down the Ben Peters rabbit hole, which, he actually wrote Kiss an Angel Good Morning, which I would say is probably Charlie Pride's most well known song and maybe the most well known country songs. But that brings me to I really I don't have much else to say, but I'll ask you: you have a favorite Charlie Pride song of all time?
Oh, well, I mean, now
I'll
I
put you
guess
on the
it would
spot here.
be the song we were just talking about earlier. I mean, when I stop leaving, I'll be gone. I feel like that's that's probably my favorite now. But Yeah, before that, maybe I would have thought. I lean a little more towards what's the name of the song? Going to San Antone.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I really love that song. I think that was probably the first Charley Pride song I heard, but um, I happen to just love that song.
I love that one too. You ever heard "Just Between You and Me"?
No, no, I haven't.
Oh man, I have to send that one to you after we get off. Pedal Steel on that one's up there with like apartment number 9 or something. Oh, that was one of his first big hits. That song's quite special. And man, I mean, does my ring hurt your finger? Like you said, has anybody going to San Antone? Man, he was yeah he was quite a singer, and I'm glad we have a lot of Charlie Pride music that we can listen to. And this has made me want to go. I've heard quite a bit, but I definitely want to go in and deep dive because, like I said, I didn't know any of these songs. We listened to the whole album, and I'm not disappointed in listening to any of these songs. And I didn't skip any, even through like, however many times I listened to it. Never a point where I'm like, all right, I've heard this song too many times. So, if this is just some random 1978 album, I'm sure some of the peak albums are just magical. So
Yeah, I think
I'm
that's.
glad I'm glad we settled on some burgers and fries to discuss and devour here.
Yeah, maybe you sit down, have some burgers and fries, and listen to this record. I mean, I did it, and it worked out well. It's a great album to listen to on any occasion. But once the weather warms up and you're grilling and you got some burgers and fries, maybe turn on some Charlie Pride next time.
All right. Well, I got a whole lot of things to sing about, but I'm gonna call it a wrap on this album. So
I think.
this is Who's Gonna Fill Their Shoes signing off. Adios. Thanks for listening again.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Adios.
We'll be back next week with something else. I don't know what it is, but we'll be here.
Yeehaw.
Cheers. Yeehaw.